So, November 30th, 2022. What happened at that time? Well, you may remember that date or about that time. We all got AI on our desktop. ChatGPT happened. And what did marketers do? We made content and lots of it and more content. Blog articles, podcasts, white papers. We made lots and lots and lots of content. Even scripts for videos, we made it with ChatGPT. But here's where we are now. Marketers are publishing more AI-assisted content than ever, and we're also creating more noise than ever. More noise. Not enough signal, but lots of noise. So we're not short for content, that we know. But the problem isn't the volume. It isn't creating too much content. The problem is that there's so much content being created and it's not quality. So for example, 7.5 million blog posts published every day. 20 million videos uploaded to YouTube every day. And we're not talking about, of course, just entertainment. Even business videos are up in that mix of numbers. And then also, 65% of our content isn't being used by sales. I ran this slide by a friend of mine who's an executive at a large bank, and that's the first number that really jumped out and said, yep, you're right. We don't use the content that marketing makes. And there's a reason for that, because quantity is not a problem unless your content lacks quality, and that's just noise. And at the same time, you have to have quality, because if your output is too low, then that's silence. You're not visible in the market. So reality is, even though oftentimes we demonize quantity, it is a very important part of the equation. So the good thing is, now that we have AI, quantity and quality are both possible at the same time. We don't have to choose or debate quality or quantity. Now we can have both. And today I'm going to show you how to get to that point. So what we're going to cover today is, one, I'm going to give you a formula that brings the balance of quantity and quality. I'm going to give you a framework you can use to create a process internally to extract knowledge and get those outputs of quality. I'm going to give you the main three inputs you have to consider in the main three steps here, as well as we're going to go through, where your content lives after you're able to increase that quality and quantity at the same time. Now, in terms of AI, here's how the failure actually happens, and it's quite silently, because our output goes up, our content calendars get filled up, and we pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we are filling that calendar up and our output is up. But the problem is our buyers still don't move. We're creating all this content, but it's for a business purpose. And if the buyers don't move, then we have a problem. And our AI is actually failing us, because we have to consider that AI content alone is just language. It's predictive. It's predicting the next word. And so the result of that is it can sound correct, but it's also generic. I mean, it's technically accurate, but it's not unique or memorable. And at the same time, it lacks a point of view. There's no stance. No stance means there's no reason to pay attention, and your readers and viewers feel that there's nothing in it that has any kind of friction. And at the same time, it lacks lived experience. AI has never closed a deal. It's never been in that nervous meeting with the client to try to win a deal. That experience and that opinion is just not there. It's just predictive. Because what buyers actually reward is not the noise. We know there's noise. What they want to hear is they want to learn, they want some clarity. They want new information. Information gain is important. They want a new perspective, and they want signals from people that shows that they can trust you or that brand. So, our buyers are facing so many different competing options. They have so many choices. They need clarity as to what does that mean to you? What does it mean to me? What is your experience? What's your opinion on all these choices? We need that kind of clarity. And then at the same time, when a company has some new information and can give a client or a prospect some information gain, then they can trust that company more, because there's more trust in companies that have original research and even opinions that are different from the next person or company. And at the same time, we're talking about trust here. 50% of buyers now weigh trust equally with cost and quality. So you have two products. One of them may cost less, one may have a higher quality, but how do we know if that's true? How do we trust that? We need signals of trust from the people who are selling it. And AI just gives you the information. It doesn't convey that kind of trust. Therefore, you end up with noise. So think about what your buyers actually reward when you begin creating this content. If you're a marketer struggling to create content that's truly unique to your brand, here's the key. Your experts and executives are your most valuable content assets. Conversational content like videos and podcasts featuring your team stand out above all other content. So instead of creating content that sounds just like your competition, start leveraging the unique voices inside your company. Thought leaders and authentic conversations build credibility and engagement. At Content Monster, we specialize in remote content production, meaning we coach your people to be comfortable on camera, then we capture and produce high-quality videos and podcasts featuring your team and customers. No need for expensive production crews, long production plans, or complex setups. Want to see how it works? Visit contentmonster.com today to learn more. Obviously, the cost of being generic is that your content contributes to the noise and your authority is much harder to establish. The authority comes from knowing that there's a person behind this content. Trust is harder to earn. Everyone in your category sounds the same because if they're pulling from the same AI, which pulls from more AI, that means that that content already exists somewhere. Someone has already said it, and it could have possibly been your competitor. And then the sales team, as we mentioned earlier, stops using your content because they know that content could have been written by anybody. It could have been written by your competitor. It could have been just generic. It doesn't help deals move forward because it isn't unique to what they're trying to sell in your brand. So a few things to stop doing right now that have become habits is prompting your way to finished content. Now, don't get that confused with not iterating. You do want to iterate, but too often we prompt and then we say, let me give a more prompt without ever putting that human input in the middle. We prompt until we get to an output and say, that's good enough. But there's a lot missing in that, and we're going to get into deeper why you don't prompt your way to finished content. Another thing is asking AI to be a thought leader. You cannot create thought leadership content for your business or your leadership because AI can't think. It just predicts and creates content based on what it's already experienced or consumed, rather. And then we also often publish these trend summaries, but you can't publish a trend summary without a point of view. Like, if you think the market is going this direction, why? What's your opinion of that? What's your experience? Why should I trust that your summary makes a difference? Writing tips anybody could write, your competitor could write, like the 5 tips of this, that, and the other. And then also repurposing weak content into more weak content. The act of repurposing alone has to have a structure and a reason behind it. And it can't just be taking this content and saying, hey, change this from a YouTube script to a LinkedIn post to an article. That's repurposing content to more content. And if you didn't start off with strong content in the first place, which is what I'm about to show you, then you're just repurposing weak content into more weak content. All right, so here's the shift that I want to bring to you. From producing more to producing different or differently. From producing more content to producing different content. This is the shift I want to emphasize here. And the formula is this: human viewpoints plus context, and then finally you add in AI. In that proportion, human viewpoints should be the majority of it. Context is going to guide it, and AI is your production level. All those 3 things together allow you to have quality content at scale. You're reaching quality and quantity at the same time with those 3 things added together. So in this change, you want to change the inputs. We're inputting information into AI, but the most important shift is we need to change what we're giving AI. We can't just ask for content out of AI. We have to change the way we input information into AI. And once we do that, we improve the quality and we scale the quantity at the same time. So I'm going to go into now these 3 parts. The human viewpoints, I'm going to give you a framework. And then also the context, the most important parts of the context we want to input as we change these inputs. And then we're going to talk about AI for scaling, how we get to that quantity place now that we have the quality in place. So your input 1, of course, is your human viewpoints. A human viewpoint is your judgment from real experience. What do you believe? What have you seen fail? What would you do instead? This could be individual viewpoints. It could be the company's experience as a whole. What has your company experienced? Think about the deals you made, the ones that were successful, the ones that weren't successful, some of the programs or the software, the platforms or the products you've made. What was successful? What wasn't successful? What do you believe about the industry based on your or your company's experience? That's the number one input. So I'm going to give you a framework now, because often we know what we want as the input, but then we think, well, how do we extract this human content in order to create high value business content? What guidance do we have to say, well, we have this article, we have this content, how do we improve this content, and how can AI assist us in that? Well, we're going to use AI at the beginning and the end. And the beginning part is going to be to pull out these specific questions from your experts. Here's how we're going to do that. The POET framework starts off with proof. What actually happened? The opinion part is, what do you believe? We just discussed. Experience. What did it feel like? Remember, these are things that AI doesn't have yet. We're going to pull this out of our humans by using AI. And then finally, these all build up to, does it match your reality? Does it, as a human, match what? Does your customer see what you've done? And does it match their reality? What is your experience? What are your opinions on this? So the proof, the opinion, the experience add up to trust factors. Now, I've got a free tool you can use that is really, it's just a huge prompt we've built with the interface. And as I describe this to you, you can either think about using the tool. It's at contentmonster.com/poet, or you can think about how to build your own extensive prompt and even a user interface. This came out of our process of making sure that our clients' content had these 4 items: proof, opinion, experience, and trust. And in order to do that, we needed questions. So we could go to the engineer, the subject matter expert, the CEO, and say, let us ask you questions, because the articles that were written before, they looked like AI, they sounded like AI because they lacked these elements. So we're going to ask you some questions to pull out these things. So once you go through this form or create your prompt, and I'll show you how, then you interview your subject matter expert. Then you get the questions. You ask those people the questions, and they're going to be difficult. It requires some human intellectual labor to pull out the kind of content you want to make your content better. We once had a CEO say, wow, these questions are hard. And that was the purpose. Writing an AI article is easy, but getting the experience and the opinion out of a person, those are going to be hard questions. It makes them stop and pause and think and pull out stories and experiences and proof that makes it something that only your team, only your experts, only your company can create. So here's an example of the POET questionnaire. It's a longer form, but basically I want to point out some things. This is the user interface we built on top of what we had was a growing library of prompts in order to output questions to ask these experts. So a few of these important ones here are the reader's primary role. Now, you're creating content, and you want to make sure this content goes to the right people and it speaks to them. So the primary role is, are they a buyer, a decision maker, part of a committee? Are they part of the C-suite? Are they just an influencer in that company? What is that person's primary role? Are they another engineer? Are they a consultant? What is their role? Their primary position is actually their title. Is it the CEO, the CTO? Is it the engineer, developer? Who is that person? The primary reader problem is, are they trying to solve something? Are they trying to learn something? Are they trying to compare your product to someone else's product? Again, keep in mind, if you're creating a prompt for this, you're thinking about writing questions under the hood to say, if I give my prompt this article that we wrote back in 2022 or last year, whenever, we want to make it better. I want you to examine this article, talking to AI, and ask these questions. I want to tell you who this is for, and with that context, you can output better questions for me to make sure when I interview this subject matter expert, I'm asking them the right questions so I get answers targeted to the right person. I'll continue here, the enhancement goal. So let's say you have an article existing, but you want to clarify an argument. It could be for or against the use of something or comparing products. You maybe want to improve the sales relevance of this content so that your sales team actually uses this content. You may want to improve the SEO or improve the depth. And then what proof do you have available? What this does is, by giving a choice here and inputting this context, it allows you to ask questions that that particular subject matter expert probably has. So for example, if you know they have personal experience, then the output from this process will be questions to extract their personal experience. It's going to extract case studies. It's going to extract any anecdotal observations they have. You're going to put this in your input so that when the questions come out, you get specific questions to not only the topic, but to the person that you're talking to. I'll give you some examples. Now, these examples would be much more detailed based on your particular article or topic. But for example, for proof, you would get 3 outputs of 3 questions. Walk me through a real moment that has worked. What actually happened? That'll get the SME to give you some examples of that story, of that scenario. And again, the questions will be very specific to your input. So these are generic questions here. Opinion. What do you believe about this that your industry would push back on? Experience. Tell me about the time you realized the old way was wrong. This is gonna make them pause and think. And this is you extracting this human viewpoint from a person. AI's job originally was to take the context and say, okay, I know the context. Now I'm going to ask you some difficult questions to pull this out of the human. And from that, we get some trust factors. But also, what would be true for someone to ignore your advice? So they're going to say, well, what would be true is we just found that 30% of people did so and so. You're going to pull these factors out of someone. And when you do that, then the whole process changes because context tells AI who this is for. Now, that form under the hood is a lot of prompting that we built over time. But if you take the Poet framework and you can build your own prompt for the same extraction. Marketers and sales leaders, if you want to close more deals and drive real revenue growth, you need cash. And I don't mean money. I'm talking about my new book, Cash, the 4 keys to better sales, smarter marketing, and a supercharged revenue machine. It gives you a proven framework to improve the 4 areas that impact revenue the most: communication, alignment, systems, and honesty. You need a stronger sales and marketing engine, and this book will show you how to build it. Get your copy now at aleejudge.com/cash. Now, back to the content. So next is the context. Now, when you're talking to AI, it really wants to know, what do you really want? What you really want? Like, where are we going with this? So it's going to ask you things like, you need to tell it things rather, like, what's the role? Your role in this creation is to do what? Who is this for? Is it for the executive? Is it for the buyer? What moment are they in? Are they confused? Do they need more information? What is the desired outcome? Do I want a script for YouTube? Do I want a blog article? Do I want to improve a blog article? Without this kind of context, AI writes for everyone, and AI content written for everyone gets ignored. So here's your workflow at an overview. So the form or your prompt is the intake process. Poet extracts context to generate questions specific to the audience, article, and your business goal. So you have your intake. That's you're adding in all the missing context, your article, your topic, your audience, your role. Then you have the Poet lens, like, check this box. Do we have proof? Do we have opinion, experience, trust signals? I guarantee if you take an article that's on your website right now, written in 2023 by AI, it will not have these things, okay? Question builder. So now you're going to ask the right questions to your subject matter expert and pull out these useful details, and you're going to avoid generic angles that anyone could have said. And then from that, you have the questions, and your AI works from a better source material, because now you've not just giving it like, give me a prompt on, give me an article on this thought leadership piece on where our industry is going. Now you're saying a specific direction. You're giving it much stronger insight, and much less random content is going to be output from that. All right. So remember, the core idea here is that Poet isn't the content generator. It is not creating the content. It's the context engine that tells AI what to ask. I'm going to give you an example here. Now, this is an example, one of our clients who we took an existing article and we ran it through Poet, and we have a list of questions, probably 3 questions for every one of POET of Poet. And then we got them on camera to record videos. I'll play a couple of these clips here.
I have a friend who's the poster child of infomercials. Like, it's the latest and greatest, right? He always falls for them. Anything that comes out. And I bring that up because I think AI in a lot of ways is like that. Like the AI, I can apply it here, I can apply it there. It's going to solve all things. It's going to be the instant gratification, right? The fast fix. And what we found is, and there's reports on this that 95% of AI implementations have failed. They haven't delivered. Why? Because the underlying foundation of any AI implementation, there's not one engagement that I've been on personally that I'm not asked, is my team good enough? Do I got the right people? Is my sales leader good enough? Because talent is 50% of the equation, right? 50% of success is talent. And then the other 50% is, hey, you've got to enable that talent to be successful, right?
So what you have here is, and it's very important to notice these nuances. In his content, you hear him say things like, in my experience, what we saw was, those are not things AI can do. AI can't say it can't say in my experience. This is coming from a human inside your organization, and you're getting this experience, you're getting their opinions, and you're getting a human face you can trust. Now, we're familiar with the repurposing process, which we'll mention in a moment. But the main thing is here, now we've captured this content on video, and you can imagine what's downstream: full-length video, short video, articles. We improved the existing article that was there now with this person's input. After this process has happened, you have vastly improved your content, both your existing content and your creation of new content. Because the thing is, you have the same topic and the same AI, but with this process and this context, now you have better output. Even if you're taking an existing article and improving it, if you're creating new content, now you have much better output because you have a process in place. Hey marketers, imagine harnessing the power of conversations to elevate your brand's authority and visibility. With Content Monster's podcast production services, you create a platform to connect with executives and subject matter experts, fostering relationships that position your brand as a thought leader. Our expert team collaborates with you to craft engaging podcasts, which can be repurposed into videos and social media content, maximizing your reach across platforms. Don't let content creation challenges hold you back. Partner with Content Monster to transform your marketing strategy and reach more customers. Visit contentmonster.com today to get started. Now, I want to mention this one thing. The brand guide. Just got a new job because you have to dust off these brand guides. They're typically locked away in some folder online that you only see when you have a new hire or you add a graphic designer team or whatever. But here's where you want to take that brand guide out, dust it off, and use it to ground your AI in context. We're still talking about context here, and our brand guides are a key component in that. So the new job of the brand guide, and this applies to both your company and to your personal brand when you're writing for the company. So you want to make sure that guide has beliefs, what you stand for, stances, what you don't stand for, what you stand against, your sayings, your phrases. I have a personal guide that I have in my phone. I jump into it whenever I have an idea or I say a certain phrase that's purely me. For example, I often say, you can't get blood from a turnip, which basically means you can't get money from somewhere where the business doesn't have money to spend. That's in my guide, and I've seen it show up in articles that I use AI to write for me because it's so based in how I think and how I talk. It even has my strange little phrases there. Your values, what are your non-negotiables? Your voice rules, what do you sound like? What kind of words do you use? What words do you don't use? And then the boundaries, what do you not do? That way you don't have your AI writing content and extending your editing time because you're trying to undo something that your business or you just don't do. These are all things that you want to update regularly. You want to look at your existing brand guides and update those, update things that change as the market changes or as your product changes so that your content that touches this brand guide always understands what's current. And then here's an important part. As you create your workflow, that brand guide needs to always be accessible. In every piece of content you create, it should be able to reach out to that brand guide, whether it's stored in your Google Docs or in SharePoint or inside a ChatGPT project or a Claude project. or attached to the prompt itself, that brand guide should always be accessible so they can reach out each time it creates content with you. That way you have on-brand results, you have on-brand content, your messaging stays aligned. For example, if you have different people in your company and they're all writing content, the message stays aligned because your AI workflow is referencing the exact same brand guide each time. And of course, from that, you get better content. So finally, after your human viewpoint, your context, now you use AI as your productivity engine. You scale that human input with AI. That's your final part. So it's important to put AI to work in the right places, though. It's not creativity, it's your productivity. So framing, feed it your sales calls, your transcripts, your brand guides, every piece of content you have to input for that particular task. And the raw material becomes your angle. It becomes what makes your content different from your competitors. And then organization. You can point AI at loose or large volumes of content, whether it be documents, articles, all your website blog articles, for example, spreadsheets, all these loose things, and say to AI, organize this to make sure that what we're creating, you understand where we've been as well as where we're going. Even meeting notes. I've had a case where we created a quote for someone, and before the quote went out, we pulled in some meeting notes, and the quotes in the AI said, oh, by the way, the CEO said this was very important to her. That we almost missed, but AI was able to look at all the unstructured information, organize it, and point it out to us for a better quote document. And then clarity. It takes all that unstructured information, gives it a clear through line, and checks it against your brand guidelines. And then finally, we all know about repurposing. But the thing is, we now know how to create a strong asset. And then once we have a strong asset, we spin that one asset into many formats for every channel. I mentioned the channel because with AI, you have this content that was designed for example, a web page or a blog article that has its own structure and context, which is different from you writing a script for YouTube, which is different from a LinkedIn post or an Instagram post. But because you can create this process and workflow once, you don't have to worry about additional workload to do more and more platforms. Now you can take this quality, create the workflow one time for each channel, and then it's just a matter of yes or no, check the box. I'll give you an example. For me, my Claude knows if I've produced a YouTube video but didn't do an article for it, it'll tell me, oh, by the way, I'm checking the boxes here. You did YouTube, but you didn't do a LinkedIn post, a LinkedIn video, an article on your website, a newsletter. Not only does it check me on, did I repurpose all those things, it also knows the formatting specific to those channels so that it's not just taking the same thing and regurgitating it. It's reorganizing it, changing the hooks, changing how it's written, changing the format to make sure I have H1s and H2s in an article. All those things are important. So you want to teach AI to repurpose within these constraints that we've talked about before. You have your pillar content, but then you run it through your poet test. Your AI should say, if I'm repurposing this, does it hit the marks of proof, opinion, experience, and trust? Have I seen the brand guide, whether it's written into your Claude skill, your project? Has your repurpose process checked in with these things and make sure your brand guide's on point? And then, has it fit the format? Do I have the right format for LinkedIn, the right format for YouTube, for Instagram or your articles? And then finally, you have a publish. You can publish content across platforms, but not the same thing. The content has context and formatting specifically purposed for each asset in each different channel. As if it were the original, you run it through the same process to make sure they all check the boxes in terms of your poet, passing the poet test, and also your brand guide. It goes without saying that we realize now we're in a bit of a chaotic time trying to figure out how to show up in AI. But the general rule right now is being on one channel is not enough, because search everywhere optimization is a thing because we don't know where AI is going to look. And each time it looks, it could be a different place. So if we were back 3-4 years ago where we had to figure out, do we post here or there, this would be a bigger problem. But if you use AI to create good content in the first place, and then use AI to multiply that quality content, now we can have quality and quantity, and we can put our content in more places so that we have a greater chance to show up in AI search. So I'm going to give you 3 things as I wrap up here. 3 things, pick one. Just pick one and do it this week. You don't have to do all 3, but pick one. You can either capture your viewpoint, that document I mentioned that has, your personal brand guide, your business brand guide, your sayings, your stances, what things you definitely don't do, you or your company. Create that document. Dust off your old brand guide. Make sure it has these things in it. Also, you could do this. You could interview one expert. Take the Poet framework. You can put an old article that maybe they wrote or you wrote in their space. Put it through the Poet framework. Record it. Feed that transcript back into your content pipeline, which means basically once you have these answers from this expert, you ask the questions to the expert, you get better answers, and those better answers make better content. Plus, you can output also the video from that. Or your third option here is make a real workflow. Update your current workflows to make sure that your content passes the Poet test. You make sure you extract viewpoints. Your brand guides are being used in your workflow. Your repurpose steps have all these things to make sure that your workflow is improved for higher quality. That way you can also end up with higher quantity. So here's your formula to wrap up with: human viewpoints plus context, then plus AI equals quality content at scale. Remember, AI is your productivity engine. It's not your creativity engine. It's your productivity engine. You're steering the wheel. You're guiding AI, but it is definitely your productivity tool. I'll leave you with this. When everyone has the same AI, the only difference left is the human behind it. The human behind it. AI is a wonderful tool, but we want to have your input to make sure that it's differentiated, unique, has opinions, has experience, that it is your content. All right. I'm A. Lee Judge. Thank you for hanging around and listening to this. I hope you got a lot from it. I know it has changed the way we make content and the quality of that content. I would love to stay in touch with you. So here's all my information. You can email me directly or go to my website or hit that quick connect to make sure we get back to you. But I'd love to continue the conversation. So thanks again.